It was 1:30 in the morning in the quiet town of Troy, Illinois, when police dispatch received a disturbing 911 call. On the other end of the line was a man named Neil Howard. He sounded extremely drunk. His speech was slurred. His thoughts were scattered. But one thing was clear. Something was very wrong inside his house. Neil told the dispatcher that his mother had a man over earlier that night. He thought it was a date. At some point, he heard the back door open and someone running away. Then he heard something else. His mother screaming. When he went upstairs to check on her, he found her in her bedroom, unmoving, unresponsive. Terrified, Neil called 911. With very little information to go on, 2 officers were dispatched to the house for a welfare check. When they arrived, they immediately noticed something strange. Neil was outside waiting for them. He seemed disoriented, anxious, and heavily intoxicated. He told officers his mother often played loud country music late at night. That night was no different, but something about the house felt wrong. Neil claimed he heard the dog whining from inside one of the rooms, and he was too afraid to go back in. So the officers stepped inside. They followed Neil upstairs toward the bedroom. Then he said something that instantly raised alarm. "She's bleeding from the mouth." The officers rushed forward and pushed open the door. What they saw was horrifying. Neil's mother, Norma Carricker, was lying on her bed. Around her neck was a bungee cord pulled tight. She had been strangled. One of the officers immediately checked her body. To his surprise, she was still warm. There was a chance she might still be alive. Without hesitation, the officer began performing CPR while other officers secured the house. Neil was quickly detained outside as police searched for the mysterious man who had supposedly fled through the back door. A K-9 unit was called to track the suspect, but the trail went cold almost immediately. Whoever had been there had vanished. Meanwhile, inside the house, paramedics arrived and took over life-saving efforts. They worked desperately to revive Norma, but it was too late. After several minutes, she was pronounced dead. What began as a simple welfare check had quickly turned into a homicide investigation, and investigators soon learned something shocking. Norma Carricker wasn't just an ordinary resident. She was the widow of Charles Carricker, the former mayor of Troy. Now detectives had a high-profile murder on their hands, and the only person who might know what happened was the intoxicated son who made the call. Because Neil was extremely drunk, detectives couldn't question him right away. Instead, they let him sleep in a holding cell overnight. Meanwhile, officers returned to Norma's house the next morning. Family members had started arriving. That's when investigators met Norma's daughters, Andrea and Jenny. But something about Andrea immediately stood out. Her mother had just been murdered. Yet Andrea appeared unusually calm, almost cheerful. It was a reaction that struck officers as odd. But the surprises weren't over yet. While police were still speaking with the family, a white pickup truck slowly drove past the crime scene. The driver rolled down the window and asked a question. "Is Norma all right?" Officers soon learned the driver was Terry Dietz, Norma's boyfriend. But when Terry spoke to police, he referred to her only as a close friend. He seemed to be downplaying their relationship, and that immediately raised suspicion. Detectives brought Terry in for questioning later that day. He told them he had last seen Norma the evening before at the bar where she worked. But during the interview, investigators asked him something very specific. Did Norma have a life insurance policy? Terry hesitated, then admitted something shocking. Yes, and he was the beneficiary. Detectives already knew this, because earlier that morning, shortly after driving past the crime scene, Terry had called the insurance company, asking about collecting the payout, $14,000, just hours after Norma had died. It was an incredibly suspicious move, and suddenly Terry became one of the main suspects in the murder. But Terry wasn't done talking. In an attempt to shift blame, he told detectives something chilling. He said Norma's son Neil had violent tendencies. In fact, Terry claimed Neil had already killed someone once before, his own father. Investigators quickly confirmed the story. Years earlier, Neil had shot and killed his father during a drunken argument. Neil claimed it was self-defense. The case went to trial, but the jury couldn't reach a verdict. Eventually, Neil was acquitted. Now detectives were faced with a disturbing reality. The son who found Norma's body had a history of killing a parent. and the boyfriend had a financial reason to want her dead. But there was still one more mystery. The unidentified man Norma had gone out with that night. Surveillance footage from a nearby bar soon revealed Norma leaving with a man shortly before midnight. They appeared comfortable together, talking, laughing, drinking. Then they left together. It was the last time Norma Carricker was seen alive. Now detectives had 3 possible suspects: a violent son, a suspicious boyfriend, and a mystery man who disappeared into the darkness. And the truth behind Norma's murder was far more twisted than anyone could imagine.